Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering my fifth full year in chess. This was the entirety of 2021, and as you guys may know, during 2021 it was hard to play chess over the board. So this is the last year of recaps essentially where there's no OTB chess to talk about. So if you're uninterested in what I'm going to talk about, which is mainly just going to be my blitz stats and my opening repertoire, then feel free to skip it. And actually, I'll be posting my 2022 year in review just a day or two after this one. So that one will be maybe more of your speed. So here I had a pretty okay year. I started off as a 1930 and ended as 2033. And the surprising part is how I started was nearly the lowest I ever was for the entire year. My lowest rating was 1914, and my highest went over 100 points higher than how I ended for the year, 2137, which is a nice peak to get. Uh, so that's definitely a highlight. And you can also see now the graph also for just the progress. You can also see a little bit of the national ratings and the FIDE ratings. Though, one important thing to point out is since they're seen, obviously they're right at the start there, and then there's like a huge gap. There's going to be a lot for 2022, I promise. There's going to be a lot of national games and FIDE rated games in there, so you can see the graph, not just with blitz. So let's actually jump into the openings, because I feel like that's something we should discuss, because that's kind of the whole point here, and just see how I was playing. So this time around, I started playing a lot, and I mean a lot, of d4. I finally switched things up. So I was having a bit of an identity crisis this year and next, because I was getting kind of tired of playing e4 positions and being out prepared, specifically in French defenses. I wasn't happy here. My score, as we can see, is absolutely awful for the year. I had little to no confidence. I would try a little bit of different things, knight d2, knight c3, and didn't really find my footing in 2021. And whenever I played against anything else, for the most part, I did okay. Scandinavian, I still could have played better, but not a ton of games, so I'm not as worried about it. But that's still important to point out. So yeah, against e5, c5. Oh, yeah, against e5 or c5, I had okay results against the Sicilian. Mainly my results against e5 was what was carrying my positive score. But the Sicilian, yeah, there was a lot of cases where I would play against things like e6, where I was just unhappy with the positions I would get. And as you can see here, I played like a lot of g3, for example, just trying to get out of any normal Sicilian, which is definitely the wrong approach here. But yeah, that's kind of how it went when we look at e4. With d4, I didn't really have any preparation. I just kind of played d4, c4, and just kind of guessed my way through. So now that I have a little bit more research done against d4 myself, it'll be interesting to see how I played. For example, against knight f6, appears that I had good results. e6, which is kind of like a Nimzo or a Dutch invitation. For example, here they could play f5 or knight f6. I think both are fun. Even d5 is just a queen's gambit, just by a different move order. But it's an invitation to play e4, which is the French. But of course, I didn't want to play that here. So yeah, going back, against knight f6, one thing I'm really curious about is how I performed against the Nimzo. which is a very popular line. And it appears I kind of just like made things up as I go because I have a little bit in knight f3 and knight c3, and just to be clear, not really any preparation in either one. For knight f3, yeah, the Bogo Indian gave me some trouble, not surprised there. I'm curious if I saw any Tarash games, maybe. It doesn't appear like I played against the Tarash at all, which is totally fine. But against knight c3, bishop b4, I think I played... okay, I played knight f3. This is interesting. The main line, I believe, goes queen to c2 here. And the whole point is you're ready to recapture with the queen instead of letting your structure get damaged here. But again, my understanding of d4 openings is significantly worse than my understanding of e4 openings. And that kind of covers it, I think, for d4. I wonder if there's anything else here. Maybe the King's Indian would be cool to see, actually. Generally, I thought this was like a confidence point for me, but now going into it and looking at like the main line, for example, of e4, seems like I actually had some trouble here, which is not a good sign because, well, I thought I was confident, but the numbers don't really back up the confidence being deserved here. I guess I tried taking, I tried a few different things here, but generally, of course, castles is a critical line. So is d5. So is d takes d5. Like, there's a lot of critical lines against the King's Indian, so that's really not fair. And I think that covers it for the white side. Let's actually go to the black side and see how things changed this year. So as the black side, my repertoire against d4 was doing slightly better than it was against e4. And I don't remember exactly how I was playing against e4 at the time. So my Alekines went down quite a bit this year, which is good because the Alekine isn't really the best weapon to use. It's a good surprise weapon, but not really much more. Surprisingly, I played quite a bit of e5 and had good results with them, but I didn't stick with it, which is funny because, hey, if I had this good of results with e5, then maybe it's something to look into more. But against c5 here, when we look into things, I went back into, I believe, was it a Najdorf? I'm not sure if it was a Najdorf or if it was, yeah, it was a Najdorf and classical. So it started off as a Najdorf. I don't know if I played classical Sicilian yet, but I started off playing the Najdorf, and I found there to be way too many lines to memorize. There's way too many good moves here, like bishop e3, bishop e2, bishop c4, bishop g5, f3, g3, h3, a3, a4. Like there's a ton of good moves, and that's actually a huge reason why I switched to the classical Sicilian, and I still actually play it in 2022, at the end of 2022. And the reason why is because, well, there's not as many challenging moves. The main challenging move here is about bishop g5, and that's kind of it. If they don't play bishop g5, which actually I lost all my games in anyways, so that's not really a good sign. But generally, if they play other moves, it's not really as challenging. For example, a normal move like bishop e3, if you play against the Najdorf and you play this move here, this isn't actually the best move, because now you run into knight g4. And I've seen a lot of games just go bishop c1, queen to b6 here, attacking the knight. And then they'll go something like bishop b5, e5, knight d5, and I believe like queen takes d4. And we end up just like winning on the spot. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. I'm wondering why I switched from the Najdorf. Of course, I know why, but I want to see if there's any specific lines that were giving me trouble at the time. Like the reason why is because Bishop g5 is really the only testing move, but against a6 or for a6, against bishop e3, I had fantastic results. Bishop g5, horrible results. Bishop e2, horrible results. Pretty much everything except for like bishop e3, I had pretty bad results in, which is not really a good sign there. But hey, the fact that I was having good results at least against bishop e3 is kind of a nice takeaway. And the funny thing is, yeah, my results are actually worse with the classical. I think that might be partly due to the fact that I played Najdorf before. So this year I was going on like a second or third year of experience with the opening, whereas classical was completely new. So that could be swaying it a little bit, but also it is a very difficult opening to play. And yeah, definitely what this tells me is that I needed to work on it even more and try to understand it even deeper, or switch openings, because hey, as we saw, my e5 openings were doing even better than that. And hey, if they do that good, then maybe they're worth a shot to go into. Yeah, bishop c4 or bishop c5 or or bishop e5, just bishop c5, and yeah, just play like these Italian positions, which I was extremely happy to play. And yeah, actually that is interesting to me, and who knows, maybe we'll see a revival of playing e5 in the future, because this kind of says a lot about the state of how I'm playing. All right, so going back to things here, let's check out the d4 openings. Now, we could quickly take a look at c4. Generally, I believe I played them like a King's Indian. And that's just because, like, hey, if they're starting with the English move order, then I'm guessing they're a bit more positional. That's a very big oversimplification of things, but I think that's kind of like what my mindset was at the time. And looks like I had okay-ish results. Not like the greatest. Actually, wait, let me look a little bit further. Here it says I have okay results, but then when I go a little bit into the like mainline things that transpose into the King's Indian, yeah, things start turning out pretty bad actually. And that kind of leads me to d4. So funnily enough, yeah, I do have a positive score against d4 here. And that might not sound funny, but to me it is, because this was a huge problem for me, I felt, in my opening repertoire. I played the King's Indian. I had little to no study done past like my second year of chess, and we're going on my fifth for this part for covering this year. So this was kind of like telling that, yeah, I wasn't really happy with the positions, but I just kind of didn't want to study them. And yeah, I played a lot of castles. We didn't really see too many e5s. That's the only kind of way you would try to take advantage of casting first, is playing some sort of e5, but then black gets moves like d6, c5 in. And you argue that this e5 push was a waste of time. There's actually a Fischer game that's very good to know that is in that line. Anyways, so yeah, I still played the King's Indian, and just as a forewarning, this is my last year playing it. I did play it a little while back. How far? Not far back. Sorry. Into 2022, but only I think for the first month or two, and then I made a switch. So we're going to be getting into that when the time arises. But here, yeah, just to see how things are going, could be a lot better results here. But of course, there's going to be positive and negative results in general. Whenever we got into these main lines, though, it definitely felt like I was struggling regardless of what maybe the results might say. It's just because we do give up a lot of space, and then when you get to a higher rating, like now that I'm over 2,000 for a lot of these games, a lot of the opponents that I'll play against that play d4 are going to know preparation against the King's Indian, And for me, something that I like to do is just kind of, okay, make sure I get out of the opening like unfazed, and just, work on my calculation, work on my endings, things like that. Uh, and it felt like something like the King's Indian is one of those exceptions where it's like you gotta study so much just to make sure you're okay. And that's just the impression I get, or that's how I feel when I play the opening. That doesn't mean that it's indicative of the opening, or how it needs to be played, but that's how it felt like for me. After about like 17, 1800, it felt like I was getting diminishing returns. Like the first few years, I had amazing results with the King's Indian. It was like hugely, hugely in my favor. And now we're seeing a big shift there. And that tells me that we definitely need to either work on it harder or switch things up. So I originally started working on it in the following year, uh, as we will probably see. But I quickly realized that I could do a lot less study in a more objectively sound opening. Of course, I do believe that the King's Indian is practically sound for most levels. I mean, Gawain Jones plays it. He's over 2,600 FIDE, and if you can point to someone that's like in the top like 500 players, or even top like 100, because I think Dingleren played the King's Indian a little bit here and there. Obviously Nakamura, that's another great example actually. And that's just like I'm talking about all of modern players. You can easily mention things like Kasparov, or people like Kasparov, or Fischer, but that's a different generation. So I wanted to make sure that if I said names, that they were modern, right? But again, for me, this opening just it stopped working, and my confidence went significantly kablooey, because it just felt like positions weren't for me at all. They were not positions that I enjoyed playing, and yeah. So soon I'll make the switch, which you guys will see in the 2022 recap. There's lots of stuff that will go on there, and I hope that it'll be a lot more interesting than just covering Blitz and just talking about openings. But this is kind of like just like a friendly chat of just like, hey, this is how this year went, and if you're interested, then cool. If you do not care, it's your fault for watching this far. I warned you at the start. And that's gonna cover it. So I will see you all in a few days with the 2022 recap, and probably also following that a goals video of setting goals for 2023. So thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.